our ability to heal is actually limited if we don't have a full understanding of our DNA and epigenetics. We invest so much of our time desiring to learn about others and build these bonds and relationships. And the most important relationship that we could actually build is with ourselves. We've been given this gift, this vessel of a body, and it's like a waste of time to be here with it, giving it so much of our time and not know it, to not understand its needs fully, and to be able to advocate for ourselves and to grow and to become the best version of ourselves.
In order to deal with some of our wounds or some of the insidious patterns that we face in our lives, we do have to take a look at what's happened in our families.
Healing means we are truly accepting the changes that are happening as a result of the pain and the trauma and the things that we have gone through. And healing is an opportunity for growth. But it doesn't mean that things are fixed or that any of that pain just goes away. There will always, I think, be some type of lingering signs and at least stories that we can share of what we've been through that have changed us forever.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. I'm your host, Celine Chenoy. Thank you to all of you who return every week to tune in to become a better version of yourself. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and rate our show if you enjoy this episode. Imagine if a single conversation could set your life on a new path and spark healing that reaches your whole family, even future generations. My guest today, Nicole Russell-Wharton, believes that real change starts when we challenge old family paradigms and work through past pain. Nicole will share her thoughts on stopping the silence that has held so many families back. She'll explain how speaking up and facing hard topics can help us and those who come after us grow stronger. Nicole Russell-Wharton is a best-selling author and lead advocate for mental health and the well-being of children. She serves as co-founder and executive director of Precious Dreams Foundation, the nonprofit empowering youth in foster care and homeless, and is also a CEO of a consulting agency dedicated to educating corporations on best practices for serving vulnerable populations. Nicole has earned her awards and recognition from GLAMOUR, The Observer, Walmart, NBC, Essence, NBC, and Oprah Magazine. Join us as Nicole shares her findings and exercises to help you start learning about your family history. She will guide you in starting honest talks about health, money, social issues, and more, so you can break through silence and face family challenges with confidence. Nicole, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you can join us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. How are you?
I am doing great. So I just finished reading your book, Breaking Generational Silence, and it really made me reflect on my own family and the dynamics that exist within it. And I started asking my parents some of the questions that you suggested in your book, and it was pretty eye-opening. I learned a lot from my conversations with them, and I now can see why it's so important to look at where our families have been and what they have faced. And it's clear that this is a lesson that you too learned as you went on this journey of learning about your family's past. So I'm interested to hear about your experience and going on that journey.
Yeah, I kind of fell into this strong desire to learn about my family history because of a string of health issues that I was facing. And while it is a commonly asked question when you go to the doctor of what runs in your family, and they give you an entire checklist of items that you should know about. I think for me, I always just saw them as, general things that, if I didn't have any specifics or couldn't share specific stories about certain people or my ancestors, it wasn't really a big deal. I always kind of just focused on me. And so I ended up getting diagnosed in 2022 with something called thoracic endometriosis. And I never heard of endometriosis before. But I quickly learned that this was a genetic disease. And it is something that I had been struggling with my entire life. And I was never really able to pinpoint those symptoms and connect them to anyone else that was in my family or community. And so I always just felt really alone and had no answers until I received that diagnosis. And in trying to figure out how to survive, in a sense, I started asking questions. I started picking up the phone and talking to my parents and my elders about what suffering and what pain the women in my family had experienced, and if I was alone or if anyone could relate. And I quickly learned that many women could relate, and that endometriosis was something that was being passed down to multiple women in my family, and none of us were leaning on each other. None of us knew. We were all kind of suffering in silence. So it started with this deep desire to save myself and understand my health and the DNA that I carry. And yeah, it started there. And then I realized that I am actually impacted by more than just the health that I carry, the DNA that I carry, but also the decisions that have been made prior to me having this life experience. And so I just wanted to learn as much about me as possible by looking back and talking to my family.
Yeah, sorry you had to go through that. That must have been really difficult for you, but I think it was very insightful of you to think about how it could be traced back to your lineage. What sparked that curiosity? Did you know about intergenerational healing? Because there are a lot of modalities out there.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually, a little bit more about me. I am the founder and executive director of a nonprofit called the Precious Dreams Foundation. We actually teach children in foster care and homeless shelters healing modalities and holistic approaches to dealing with adversity and daily challenges. And so coping tools and mechanisms and mental health is a daily focus and practice for me. It's something that I am constantly teaching our young people. I have multiple certifications in trauma-informed, practices, whether it's yoga or breath work. And so I had been doing this work for so many years, since 2012. I've worked with over 25,000 kids, and
Wow.
I'm constantly showing them how they can heal themselves and how they can save themselves, in a sense, if they don't have the resources or don't have the parental support. And what I learned in 2022 is that our ability to heal is actually limited if we don't have a full understanding of our DNA and epigenetics. And so for me, that was a really tough realization to accept, because I pride myself on being able to do the work, even if I'm the only person in my family that's ready and willing. And I had to accept the fact that, my healing can absolutely take place, but it will always be limited to the knowledge and the information that I have today. And there's so many stories, there's so many things that have happened within our families that impact us today. And if you're not aware, you don't have a full understanding of why you react the way that you do to things, and our different behaviors and our decision making, and where that all stems from, which makes it harder, and actually makes it a longer process for us to get to the root of our own why.
How much of it is genetic and how much of it is just the way we've been raised? The things that we pick up through osmosis in the home that we grew up in.
Mm-hmm. So, it's different for everyone, honestly. It really is. I mean, we could all look back at the way that we were raised, and we can all point to things where we either learned the lesson by watching and decided not to repeat those behaviors, or some of us just organically picked it up. And we find ourselves repeating those behaviors, whether it's in our friendships or our romantic relationships or with our kids. And so it really just depends on the person and their level of awareness of self, and whether or not they are doing the work. I'm someone who has been very open to therapy for quite some time. I think that we invest so much of our time desiring to learn about others and build these bonds and relationships. And the most important relationship that we could actually build is with ourselves. We've been given this gift, this vessel of a body. And, I think it's like a waste of time to be here with it, giving it so much of our time and not know it, to not understand its needs fully, and to be able to advocate for ourselves and to grow and to become the best version of ourselves. So, while we're all on a very different journey, and, some of us can say they've broken the generational patterns. Some of us can also admit that there still are areas that need improvement. And so, we have to look at the truth in order to determine what those things are that we need to work on.
How do we know that the problem that we're facing, or the recurring issues that are cropping up in our life, how do we know it has a link to generational issues, or something that persisted within our family prior to us living?
You really, if it comes down to behavioral issues, you really don't know unless you've formed those connections and, had the opportunity to experience your biological family, and to know their stories. And so for me, a lot of my work is done with kids in foster care. And so what makes that journey so difficult for them is that they place so much blame on themselves for many of their shortcomings, or, even when it comes to their learning preferences and things they may not understand. A lot of times, if they had the ability to have that full picture of their puzzle, they could understand, what are the reasons for those behavioral things, or those disabilities. I mean, a lot of the kids that I work with, their parents may have had issues with drugs or addiction.
I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. So a common saying is that time heals all wounds. Do you agree with that? Because, in order to deal with some of our wounds or some of the, insidious patterns that we face in our lives, we do have to take a look at what's happened in our family. So I'd be interested to hear your take on this very common saying that we hear.
I don't agree that time.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Wounds. I absolutely don't. I think we need to re-examine what our definition of healing is in order to accept that quote as fact. I mean, even when you look at surgeries and scars, you can heal from a surgery in a sense of your body being able to repair itself, and get back to a point where you feel okay. But you now have scars, physical scars that are visible, that you will always see, that has changed you. And so I think we need to accept that healing means we are truly accepting the changes that are happening as a result of the pain and the trauma and the things that we have gone through. And healing is an opportunity for growth, but it doesn't mean that things are fixed or that any of that pain just goes away. There will always, I think, be some type of lingering signs and at least stories that we can share of what we've been through that have changed us forever as a result. And so while many people hope that time will just make things go away, it doesn't. Whether it's a physical scar that you can see or something that you can feel deep down, it will always be there.
So we have to be an active participant in our healing. And I don't see this happening, in mainstream society. Do you think it comes down to just lack of awareness, lack of education?
When it comes to generational trauma and generational silence, I can't say that I think it is a lack of education because I think the information about mental health is everywhere.
Right.
We all can log on to social media. We all have Google at our fingertips. We all have free or accessible options through healthcare providers and ways that we can work on ourselves. I think the restrictions and the hardships that we face is having an inability to build those connections with family members who either aren't here and able to share those stories, or aren't willing to open up and discuss the past. I think that is the barrier. Convincing our family members to do this work with us that requires communication. That's what's difficult, because for so many years, we were taught silence as a survival tool. And for many people, they have convinced themselves that it works.
How do we navigate those conversations if we're dealing with a family member who does not really want to open up or is not used to having their past examined? How do you advise people to deal with that?
I always suggest a few things. One is remembering to respect people's boundaries. Just because you are in a place of where you are ready and willing and comfortable discussing something doesn't mean someone else is. And so while we can invite someone and open the door, it doesn't mean that they're ready and willing to walk through. So respecting the boundary is important. But I think what I found specifically with my father's side of the family, which I discuss a lot in the book, is I needed to meet my dad where he was. I needed to use his preferred form of communication. And I needed to ask open-ended questions that could give me more than just a yes or no. And I also needed to come to the table with information that I felt was helpful for him. And so, I wasn't just this inquisitive child that, called my dad one day and said, hey, I want to ask you all these things. A lot of times our conversation started with, hey, Dad, did you know? And I was telling him things about the family history that he had no idea. And that actually excited him because no one had ever talked to him about those things before. And so it created a space where he felt safe opening up to me and sharing his version of the story.
Yeah, I think that's a really great approach that you took. I think I should try that on my dad as well, because he's a man. He's a bit older, and he's from that silent generation era where they just, they take the tough guy approach, and it's like it's hard to get them to open up, especially about their feelings. So I love the idea of giving. There should be some give and take, some reciprocity, and that's a great way to make them open up.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't need to start with the tough questions.
Right.
Sometimes it's the easy questions, which are also helpful for us and things that we should know, like, where did you go to elementary school? Like, did you have a favorite food when you were growing up? And did you have access to it all of the time? Just like, getting them to reconnect with a memory from childhood is something that often excites them, to be able to go that far back and to see that someone actually cares about that stuff.
That's true. I mean, and the older people get, the more they have an affinity to like talk about the past and fond memories. In fact, they love it.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah. They can go on and on.
And we should take advantage of it. I know many people don't, especially if you've heard the same story repeated over and over again, which is something that happens often.
Yeah, but, I know.
One day you'll no longer hear those stories again. And so, record the stories, write them down, pass them down. If it matters enough to them that they're repeating it, it might matter to future generations.
What are your thoughts on those sites that analyze your DNA and look at your, I forget what it's called. They have some sort of archive where they look at your immigration history. What do you think of those?
Yeah, they are quite insightful.
Like Ancestry.com and such.
Yeah, they are quite insightful. I must admit, during my journey of trying to learn as much about my family as possible, I definitely did some DNA testing. And I was able to learn quite a bit about myself and where my family had come from. And I was able to share that information with some of my family members who were not aware. The thing with stories is they change. And, it's like playing telephone. I can tell you where my family comes from, but 2 or 3 generations from now, that person might have a very different story of where their family came from. And so what I found when I did the DNA testing is that my family was not that aware. And I think it's not their fault as well. I am an African-American woman. And so even saying that is such a complex thing because it shows the limited information that I have about my family history, knowing that at some point my family was brought here to America. And so for many generations, we survived what was happening to us, but where did it all begin? So doing the testing gave me those answers, which was really fun. And then it actually like helped me connect with a few second and third cousins and just like random people around the world that I probably wouldn't have if I didn't do it. So I know some people are against the sharing of the private information. For me, it was kind of worth it. I wanted to know. I needed more answers.
Yeah, and I think you can find some additional pieces of the puzzle, right? And it just gives you more perspective on your origins. And I actually I think it's quite fun because when I did mine, I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I just started like unraveling like new patterns and new ties that I didn't know existed. Like you, I connected with second cousins and third cousins, and
Mhm.
it was very, very interesting. I went down a rabbit hole once I found all of that. You do mention that generational silence shows up in different communities, and they are more prevalent in those that have faced trauma and had to fight for equality. Can you say
Mhm.
more about that, please?
Yeah, definitely. You know, through my line of work and was, the family that I interviewed and the friends that I worked with on this book, you know, I was able to see that people who have experienced significant trauma, displacement, systemic racism, generational poverty, these are often the people that are taught to be strong. And in order to be strong, you must move on. You must move on and let go of the past. And they are often taught that silence is a way of acceptance. And so, you know, for my family in particular, silence was a way of fitting in. And the less you complained, the less you used your voice, the more accepted you were. To put on a smile and pretend that everything is okay, to forgive and forget. Those were all tools for success at some point. And I'm really happy that we're no longer there. We're at a place where people are willing to take the risk of using their voice and dealing with the consequences of it. And that could mean something as close to home as falling out with a family member. It could mean losing a job. It could causing friction within a community. It could mean getting kicked off of a social media platform. I think there are a lot of risks that happen when people use their voices. And we are at a time where people are not afraid to take those risks because they understand that it's really worth it to do so. And that true change and impact will not take place unless someone stands up and does something. You know, when we look back at our most influential activists, the people who have literally changed policy and improved life for others, whether it's our families, communities, countries, all of those activists that we look back on used their
Mhm.
voice and they were not afraid. They did not dim their light and they took the risk and whatever that came with it.
And how do we start getting over that trauma that may have come if you belonged in such a community? Does that start with conversations as well? And what are the other things that we can do?
So personal healing is very important. And as I was mentioning, you know, there's a lot of resources online and therapists and things that we can do to work on ourselves. I think collective healing is the next step. And
Hmm.
so calling in our family members and calling in the people within our community to heal with us is something that I think takes our healing to the next level. And so we as humans have way more in common than we understand, because of a lack of communication and the inability to truly listen when we talk with each other. And so I hope that this book really invites people to call in everyone they have access to, and to strengthen those bonds by being vulnerable and open and sharing their experiences so that we can lean on each other and know that we are not in a position where we have to do life alone. So many of us think that we do, and that's a survival mechanism as well. But we don't have to do life alone, whether it's comfort from someone in our biological family or from a complete stranger that we meet in an online support group. There are so many opportunities for us to overcome our trauma and our pain by leaning on people that have understanding.
That's beautiful. Thank you for reminding us, because we're living in an age where, we're losing community. We're losing our close ties. It's just rapidly diminishing by the day, and people are feeling increasingly lonely. So thanks for reminding us of how important it is and essential it is to our well-being and to our communities as well. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. I think, especially with Precious Dreams, you're just changing lives and helping all those kids out. We need more light workers like you to really, create those seismic shifts that we want to see in our society.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And, thank you for not only reading Breaking Generational Silence, but also taking the steps within your own family to start those conversations. I love to hear
as I said, it was eye-opening. It was eye-opening. Nicole, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your wisdom with us. And I want to let our listeners know, if you want to get a copy of her book, Breaking Generational Silence, you'll find it in all major bookstores.